everybody. I'm so glad to see you this morning on our final day, day 5 of our Mastering the Job Search Conference. We're so grateful that we had all of you here this week. I know a lot of you were joining us, not just today, but every day this week. So we are so thrilled with the results. It's going to be another amazing day to fill out the end of the week. And we have to say a big thank you to all of our sponsors. A huge thank you to our title sponsor, Mackenzie Investments, our executive sponsor, Mars Canada, our session sponsors, LHH, Adecco, Indeed, and Phillips, and to all of our add-on sponsors, ICF Toronto and Isomers. As you all know, and as I've been saying this week, women have been disproportionately impacted by what has happened over the past 2 years, and women in the workforce are really impacted on what's been going on. And the aftermath of the pandemic has really been the biggest challenges of our times. Organizations are now working on a hybrid or digital model, and they're adopting new ways of working with their teams. And as a result, it's becoming really challenging to try to figure out what these, new roles are going to look like when you're starting a brand new job virtually. So whether your career is going to be fully remote or 100% in person, we know you're going to gain so many new insights this week and help you navigate the future of work. And so we're so thrilled and hope that you got so much great information this week. We want to close off this session with what's next and thinking about your future. So when you get started in your new job, you're going to ace it right away. And so with that, a big thank you to all of you who joined us this week. And I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Client Programs, Iona Frost, to kick off our Day 5 learning session.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Kate, and welcome. I cannot believe that it's the final day of the conference. This week has flown by, and as Kate said, it's been filled with so much great information and positive energy, and it's been wonderful to see so many of you join us each day. So if you are attending today for the first time this week, not to worry, you haven't missed out. Everyone who's registered for this conference throughout the week will receive a link to the recordings of all of the sessions, so you'll still get all that incredible information. This year's event generated almost 1,500 registrations, which is incredible. So again, as Kate mentioned, a huge thank you to all of you for joining us. And we look forward to staying connected through our regular ongoing programs and services throughout the year. And if you haven't already done so, be sure to sign up for the Dress for Success Toronto newsletter to get notifications delivered straight to your inbox. We always have something exciting and relevant on the go. And so although today is the last day of the conference, there's still space in a couple of our add-ons. So stick around to the very end of today's session to learn a little bit more about how to register for that and what's happening next week. As always, we like to thank our sponsors for making this event possible. And we really hope that you've had a chance to learn a little bit more about our partners throughout the week. And again, when you review the videos. Before we launch into today's session, I'm just going to cover a few quick housekeeping details. So for those of you who've been here all week, sorry, this is the last time you have to hear me say this, but we do want to make sure that everybody has access to participating and gets the support that they need along the way. So if you experience any tech issues, if you can click on the button to the right of your screen, it looks like a ship's wheel, and it's the help button. And here you'll be able to access a list of frequently asked questions, as well as some basic troubleshooting tips. If for some reason you can't find the support that you need there, not a problem. Just pop your question in the chat. And Kim, my colleague, who is monitoring all things tech and flow behind the scenes today, she's going to be ready there to help you. If you require closed captioning for this session, if you click on the button that's above the help button, so this one looks like a cloud with an arrow pointing down, there you can download instructions to activate the closed captioning option. So as I mentioned, the sessions are being recorded, and we'll make sure that we give everybody who's attended a link to our YouTube channel, and that'll be sent out to you all next week. And even though we're not in person, we want today to be as interactive as possible. So please don't be shy about asking questions or sharing your reactions. And there's a couple of ways that you can do that. So again, if you head over to the right side of your screen, there's a couple of speech bubbles there. One with 3 dots. That's for you just to pop in any comments or sort of reactions that you want to share as we go along with the conversation. If you have specific questions, if you could go to the speech bubble that has the question mark in it, that will be really helpful. I'm going to be monitoring that throughout the conversation, and then we're going to have a formal question and answer at the end so that we can capture and answer as many of your questions as possible. And last but not least, and I see that many of you have already found it, big favorite of this platform, please feel free to use the animations. You see the hands going up, the celebration and the hearts. Show us the love, show us their responses if you hear something that really resonates. So today is also the last day to win some amazing prizes. So as we've been doing every day, we've been doing random draws for a $100 Visa gift card. So if you're today's winner, you will be contacted after this session. Plus, if you have been attending all 5 days, hopefully you've been working away at the quiz for the opportunity to win one of 5 brand new Acer Chromebook laptops. So these will be awarded to the top 5 entries with the most points, and the winners will be announced next week. Okay, enough from me. I'm so very pleased to welcome our guests today from Philips, and they're going to really help you set you up for success during the first 100 days on the new job. To learn more about Philips, as well as for the full introductions of our guests, I'll turn it now over to Melissa Lake, the Director of Quality System Management. Good morning, Melissa, and welcome.
Hello, and thank you. Would we be able to have the presentation on? Perfect. Hello, and welcome to all. Thank you for joining us for our session today, Acing Your First 100 Days on the Job, Preparing for the New Job Climate. My name is Melissa Lake, and I'm a member of the Women's Leadership Group at Philips Canada. I'd like to take a few minutes to review our agenda before we jump right in. First, I'll be providing a few opening remarks, and then we'll hear from 2 of our leaders at Philips Canada, Samar Salahay and Christine Russell, who will share their tips and tricks on how to prepare for your success. Onboarding is a continuous journey, and both the employee and employer hold a role in making the most of your first 100 days on the job. Within the first few months of starting a new position, you'll want to learn how to navigate the 4 phases of onboarding from an employer and an employee perspective, as well as build a network of support that can positively influence your onboarding experience and help you to achieve your goals. Then we'll be moderating a Q&A session where you'll have the opportunity to ask the Philips leaders any questions that you may have. Now for a brief introduction on who Philips is. Philips is a leading healthcare technology company focused on improving people's health and well-being and enabling better outcomes across the health continuum, from healthy living and prevention to diagnosis, treatment, and home care. We employ approximately 79,000 employees in more than 100 countries, with about 600 of those employees here in Canada. Globally, our mission is to improve the lives of 2.5 billion people a year by 2030, including 400 million people in underserved communities by making the world healthier and more sustainable through innovation. At Philips, we believe that every individual should be treated fairly and respectfully and have equal access to opportunities and resources. As part of our commitment to support this belief, we have an active women's leadership group. Our mission is to build a community of confident women who can learn and develop their careers through the help and support of others. Our group has 4 pillars: mentorship, networking, skills and development, and pay it forward. Each pillar has its own committee and objectives to support the overall mission of our women's leadership group. I am the leader of the Pay It Forward pillar, and I've worked today with Dress for Success Toronto to bring you this session. Now, I'd like to introduce you to our speakers for today. First, I'd like to introduce Samar, who joined Philips in 2018 and has held the roles of Business Development Manager and Account Executive before moving into her current role of District Sales Leader. Samar has become known as an exceptional leader who values the power of working together as a team to unlock innovative solutions. Samar grew up in a society where women's power and independence was taken away. From an early age, she was taught anything could be accomplished by women who help and support each other. She is also the chair of the Women's Leadership Group at Philips Canada. And we'll hear from Christine. Christine joined Philips in 2021 and works as a business development manager. While her first career was in media and marketing, she successfully transitioned into healthcare sales. Christine is passionate about personal and professional development, considering herself a lifelong learner and student. She thrives on building and developing teams to launch products into new markets. And she also thrives on bringing her creative approach and unique business background to have a meaningful impact on patient lives. Now I'll turn it over to Samar to kick off today's event.
Thanks, Melissa, and thank you everyone for joining us here today. I'm honored and very excited to be here and to be able to share a little bit of my experience with you. I'm going to move over to the next slide. So, we all know that the first day of a new job could be exciting, but at the same time, nerve-wracking. We all have been there. We all have started new jobs at new companies. So you're starting a new adventure, and it is so exciting and energizing, and at the same time, terrifying. So because of that, I wanted to just, before jumping into the content, just start with a few check-in questions. Let's start with the first one. So do you truly enjoy the first day of a new job? How many of you truly actually enjoy it, get excited about it, and want to go into that first day? So you see the question, you could respond yes or no. Next question is, how many times have you had an enjoyable onboarding experience? So 0, never, 3 or less, 5 or less. Has every onboarding been great and enjoyable? Again, you could pick one of the answers just to let us know what your experience has been so far. I'll pause a little bit, give you a chance to select it. Then we'll go into the next one. So how much of the information that was shared on the first date did you retain? We know there's so much information being thrown at the candidates or the person who's starting a new job, meeting new people, gathering new input. How much of that did you truly retain? 0, less than 25%, 50%, or everything that was shared during that first day or even first week? Little pause just to give you a chance to respond. And then last question. So in your experience, what is the most critical factor in ensuring a successful and enjoyable onboarding? So we know there are quite a few factors that play here, but which one is the most critical one? So clear and frequent communication, a clear plan and outlook invites for that first week, guides and references or reference sheets, including the links that you would need, and connecting with the immediate team. So those are the answers, and or the options. If you could pick one, that would be great. And before even moving any further, I will share the most memorable or the greatest onboarding experience that I've had so far, and I'll let you know why. And it was actually at Philips. Before I even started that first day, my manager at the time, made sure that I had all the right tools and accesses that I needed. So I had my laptop, cell phone, everything that I needed ready to go. When I came to the office for that first day, he actually welcomed me, greeted me at the entrance, came with me to take my picture for the badge, walked me up and introduced me to his administrative assistant, who then sat with me and helped me start up my laptop, get logged into all the websites that I needed, and truly helped me set everything up from that first day. It was so helpful because I was so nervous and wondering, if I run into any roadblocks, where do I go? What do I do? And she was there every step of the way. And that really stood out for me. So that's why it's the most memorable. And we are going to get into that a little bit to see how you could make this experience memorable for the people that you will be onboarding. So just jumping in, the first thing I want to say is put yourself in their shoes. So I'm sure many of you are either managers or aspiring to be managers. You're going to be hiring people, onboarding people, and you want to make sure that this is a successful experience, an enjoyable experience for the person that you're onboarding and for yourself. When I got into this role, I had to hire someone and onboard them very quickly, very early on. And to be honest, I was terrified. I was thinking, what if I fail? What if this is not a great experience for the candidate? What if I don't set them up for success? Then I actually sat back and thought about it. I said, okay, let's think about my own experiences. What was the best experience that I've had? What was the worst? I tried to replicate the best experience and figure out what went well and what was helpful. And I avoided the things that I hated myself. And that's when it really clicked. So if you try to put yourself in their shoes, the shoes of the candidate who's just starting, it would really be helpful. And here are some of the questions that are going through their minds. Where do I go for help? How will I remember all of this information that's being thrown at me? How will I remember all these names, all these beautiful people that I'm meeting? Do I belong here? Will I fit in? How can I be successful in this role? What do I have to do during the first day, first week, first month, even first year to really be successful? So these are critical questions. And if you can help them answer those without even having to ask you those questions, it's going to be a great experience both for you and for the person that you're hiring. Again, remember, your new hire is probably nervous, terrified, but excited and energized. So you have to just balance that, make sure that you match their excitement, but at the same time, coach them, help them, and guide them along the way. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, now jumping into the actual onboarding. So I've broken it down here into 4 phases: pre-onboarding, welcoming new hires, role-specific training, and easing the transition to the new role. The pre-onboarding phase, for me, that is the most critical. I find that's where you get to connect, strengthen the relationship with the new team member that's coming on board. And on my side, this starts even before they start. So from the moment they start negotiating the offer, and I'll actually touch on that in a second, that's when I start connecting with them, getting in touch with them, having phone calls, text messages, just to connect with them to see what do they value, what do they need from me. And I wanted to touch on getting the offer and negotiating it. So as much as I want the new candidate to get that offer letter, sign it, and send it back, a part of me wants them to negotiate it for 2 main reasons. Many of you here are women, and we all know women don't often negotiate their offer. And it's key. When you're getting that offer letter, that means the company wants you, the organization values you, and wants you to join them. So know your worth, know your value, and negotiate. The other reason why I want them to negotiate is that I manage a sales team. So I want to see that that candidate is able to negotiate and fight for themselves, because that will show me that they're going to do the same for our organization. They're going to be sitting at the table and negotiating with me for the company, for Philips, with the customer. So for those 2 reasons, a part of me deep inside really wants them to push back and actually negotiate their offer. So go for it. Welcoming new hires, that's sort of the first day, first week. Again, it would really help if they have a clear plan, clear agenda. They know where to go, what to do, and they have everything that they need at their fingertips. Role-specific trainings, that would vary depending on the job. Again, we will get into it in a little bit, but that helps them develop their skills that they need for that job. And then easing the transition into the new role. So getting into, again, a little bit more detail for each phase. So let's talk about that first one, being the pre-onboarding. So communicating the plan, the agenda for the first day and first week is key, because it lets them know that you've given it a lot of thought, you have planned, and you actually have that plan ready for them. So there's a purpose for them starting since day 1. They will know exactly where to go, who to meet with. And I even share that before their first day. Before they start, I share that via email so that they know what to expect. It helps them it reduces that anxiety because they know what's coming. So completing the required documents. If there are documents that they need to fill out to either register for different websites or log into different systems, again, I work with them before even that first day to make sure they have the forms and they could start chipping away at it and start filling those out. So it helps them get access on day 1. Onboarding checklist and teams. I will show you a little snapshot of what we use, but I find a checklist is extremely helpful because every time that you're going through this process and through the hiring process or onboarding process, you don't leave anything out. You could always go back to your checklist quickly and easily, make sure that you're doing everything that you need to bring on that candidate and to make sure they have everything that they need. And setting the expectations, because again, they don't know, they're not familiar with the company, with your expectations. Setting those expectations early on would help them be successful, not just at the beginning, but throughout their career with the company. Then we get into welcoming the new hires. So that's that first day, first week of the job. So orientation, when it is in person, unfortunately, when I got into this role, the first onboarding or the onboardings I've had so far, they've all have been virtual, and I'll talk about that too. But if it is in person, make sure to greet them on day one, walk them through the office, show them the space, different areas, different people, introduce them to everybody, not just the immediate team, but the leadership team. It's important for them to start building that relationship with, again, not just the immediate team, but the leadership team since day one. It's important for everyone at the office to know who's coming on board, who's starting, and starts building and strengthening that relationship. Providing the list of contacts. This is key. You want them to know who to go to if they have questions. Obviously, you're there to support, but your time is limited too. So you want them to know who they can reach out to if they have different questions for different areas. One-on-one meetings with the team. Again, before the new candidate starts, I always set up meetings with our immediate team and some of the team members that I know they'll be working with closely. Put the invites in everyone's calendars, block that time, and I give that agenda to the new team member on day one. So again, they know who they're meeting with, at what time, and I even specify the role of the person that they're meeting with, just so they're aware and they could start working on the questions they want to have for that team member or that colleague, and they could start getting ready. Then we're going to role-specific training. Again, this varies depending on the job, but you want to make sure that they are signed up for the training sessions that they need to go through, and they reserve their spot. So you do that in advance. And setting up regular check-ins. So whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, whatever makes sense depending on the type of the job, you want to set those up right away too. And then easing the transition, that's that ongoing training that they will be getting throughout their development, and introducing the extended team. So meeting everybody else within the company. Let me just move on to the next slide. So I mentioned the example of the checklist that we use. This is what we use at Philips. If the company you're working for or where you're going doesn't necessarily have a checklist, don't be afraid to develop one. So start creating one. After going through that first onboarding, you get a sense of what steps are required, what's needed, and you could start making that checklist. Once you have this, second time around, it is so much easier because you're sure you're not going to forget anything and you're going to just follow through. When I'm going through this, I literally highlight or check every box to make sure that I've done this. And I start really early on. So 3 weeks before the new candidate starts, that's when I go in and I start working on this list, because we all know how long it takes to get a laptop, especially these days with the supply shortages. We know how long it takes to get a cell phone. It's not easy, and you want your candidate to have all their tools ready to go on day one. So start early, go through the entire list, make sure they have their logins for every site that they want to use. They have their laptop and cell phone and everything else that they need to use on day one. This makes the process productive and makes them feel productive and efficient. Now, moving on to the next slide. So welcoming new hire. Now, this is another great tool. At Philips, we do have a Teams group where we capture all of these documents. We have the checklist, and we also have some tools for managers to use when onboarding new employees. This is another great tool. There's a list of websites that they would need to get access to with the links, and if their passwords requires, the contact information of the person they need to reach out to get that password is included. Everything they need to know in order to set themselves up internally is included on this list. So this is another great tool that you could use to make sure that you just forward it to the new hire, and then you don't have to recreate the list every time you're onboarding someone. Org charts. It's really important to let them know who's who. There are so many names. They're meeting so many people, and you want them to make the right impression. The first impressions count. So if they're running into someone or if they meet someone, you want them to know who that person is. Provide them the org chart. So I actually, now that the onboardings have been virtual, copy paste that into a PowerPoint. I take our org chart, include it in a PowerPoint, and I share that with our new hires so that they know who the immediate team is, what the extended teams look like, and who they could reach out to for support. I find that is very helpful. Employee resource links. So the resources they need, links they need to use to go get help or to even benefits, right? That you want them to be aware of what's happening within the organization, what tools and resources they have access to, so that they could start feeling as part of the team from day one. Company presentations. If there are any presentations that your company uses as a sales pitch or even anything that's customer facing or just internally, share those with them. Let them become familiar with the lingo, with the tools that you have. And tips on frequently used platforms. For example, if you have any tips for Zoom, for Teams, or any backgrounds that you're using, share all of those with them so that they could set themselves up for success. Now, role-specific training. Again, this varies from role to role, from company to company, but I listed some of the tips that I share with them when they are getting into training sessions, because you don't want them to join the session just to sit back, and especially again now that it's virtual, and not pay attention, because all of that information matters. So these are the tips that I give them. So first impressions matter. Be present, be engaged. What you put in is what you get out. So if you're engaged, you ask questions, and you're present, then obviously you will get a lot more out of those training sessions. And the trainers are paying attention. They're watching the team, they're watching the new hires, and after each session or at the end of each week, they actually send a message to the hiring managers to let them know how the new recruits are doing. So be engaged and be present. Ask questions, share your thoughts and ideas. And this is critical, because a lot of times new hires think that they're new to the company, they don't know any better, they should just sit back and be quiet. That is not true. Sometimes you're so used to doing things in a certain way that we lose touch, but that new perspective is so helpful and so critical. And it actually happened in our case. We had 2 new hires last year, one of them a service account manager, and she has shared so many great ideas with us so far, and it's helping us still reshape the way we do things. So give that feedback and share your ideas. Don't think that you're new and you don't know anything about the company. Not true. Those new perspectives, that's what the companies want to hear about. So ask for more support if and when needed. So if you feel that you're not getting the support that you need, or the training is not enough, or the content is not enough for you, ask for more. Don't be shy. Don't be afraid to ask for more. So these are the tips that I share with our new hires even before they sit through the training sessions. Easing the transition. So that's moving into the new role, meeting everybody, whether it's virtual or in person. Again, unfortunately, until now, it has been virtual. So at the end of the first week that we hire someone, I make sure to set up a, happy hour with the team just to get everyone together and they could connect, start building that relationship and start getting closer. Team socials are, again, a great way. If you can do that in person, now that things are opening up, that would be great. If not, virtually helps too, just for them to know everyone. Buddy system. I find this is a great way to have someone else besides yourself by their side who can answer their questions, especially more technical questions. Again, I manage a sales team and we have different account managers for different modalities and types of equipment that I myself am not that familiar with. So it helps for them to have someone who could truly help them and who is in their shoes, who's actually doing the exact same job. Mentorship programs, this is key at Philips. We are putting a lot of focus and attention on that. And it really helps them have someone else to go to ask for support, to ask for help, to share their ideas with, or to, just talk about things that they may not necessarily want to talk about with their direct managers. So if you have a mentorship program, get them started right away, find them the right mentor and get them connected. Feedback and frequent and timely feedback. So stay connected with them. Ask them for feedback. Again, remember, they're new to the company. They may be shy. They may be hesitant to share that. So reach out to them and ask for that. Ask for feedback to see how you can improve your style, your ways of doing things, and also what you could be improving. Let me move on to the next slide. Okay, so this is it from my side in terms of onboarding from the manager's perspective. I will now hand it over to Christine so she could share her thoughts on onboarding from the employee's perspective. Christine, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. That was excellent. It's so interesting to see all of the effort and think about the framework that really goes into setting somebody up, because so often when we're just going through that process, we feel like we're kind of blowing in the wind a bit. So exciting news. Imagine somebody, a sales rep joining Samara's team, and they've negotiated hard with her and they got what they want. And she's got her plan forward and ready to go. Now let's take it over to what that looks like actually when you're walking through that. So, always a fan of some great quotes, and a Canadian author that I really, really love is Malcolm Gladwell. And he talks a lot about what it is to different fun things. He's really worth checking out. But, you've gotten there, your achievement is on the run, you're getting ready to go, you got to prepare. And it's all about practice too. So I think when we think about when we're stepping into a new role, it's really about a learning and a practice mindset that's going to set us off. So your 100-day plan, I've broken this into a 30, 60, 90. Oops, I think I just glitched there for a second. A 30, 60, 90, which is something that we really, in business, I think we like to talk about. So, what is at a high level, you're sitting behind your computer, you're getting ready to go. What is that in your mindset for that first 30 days? Be curious and learning and opening. That's really important. In your first 60 days, develop those relationships and in your first 90 days, work for those wins. So I'm going to delve a bit more, but even before your first date, let's talk about your first week. I'm a mom. I have two kids, a pet. I always say, first and foremost, get your house set up. Whatever other obligations and commitment you have, lean on your friends, lean on your family, neighbors, community, whoever can help you, just so that you can have that headspace that if traffic is going to be a little bit unpredictable, or maybe, I live in the city, so the TTC, God forbid, the TTC breaks down on your way home and you're frazzled, or the bus connections aren't there, that can be a challenge. One of the interesting things that I learned in one of my onboarding experiences that they hammered into our heads, because it was in surgical sales and we're walking into environments where nobody's met us before. It's kind of like you're just showing up. Hi, my name's Christine. I'm here from Philips. I'm here to blah, blah, blah. And just practice introducing yourself. It's ended up being a really interesting skill, and it's really fantastic. Also, take time to learn your teammates' names. It's hard, but work on creating whatever tips you can, because creating those little connections, and when somebody say, oh, did you talk to Eric? And then you kind of go, I talked to that French guy. So try and make notes, whatever it is you can, and really learn the way. Sit, observe. Philips is ridiculous for acronyms. I have never worked somewhere where little shorthand sayings are so much. We actually have an active online directory to look up what things mean, and one acronym can actually mean 5 different things depending on where you work and what you do. So just try and make notes of that. Work on those connections. Try and find somebody. Maybe if your program doesn't have a formal mentor program, maybe somebody else is going through new hire training with you. And I've had some really fantastic long-term business relationships, even though I've never really worked with these people again. Sometimes we're in different places or we move on to different jobs. Those connections work back. And then think back to your interview. You were hired for a reason. You're bringing value. You're solving a problem. You're the right fit. Think about those needs that came up in the interview and what they were looking for, and keep those in your mind as you navigate through. So in your first 30 days as well, really be curious. You're going to be learning a lot, new ways of working, how the company works. And while that input is really valuable for how things may have been done, sometimes it's not 100%. And, I've caught myself here where I think I know how to do something, and there's just a different way at a different organization. Take the time to listen, and listen actively. Look on the requests, look on things as they come up, and set up those regular check-ins and listen for the feedback, because sometimes it's hard. And again, when I was in that surgical skills training, it was just so incredibly challenging, but the feedback was there, and you're learning so much, and you're sensitive and you want to perform, but you also have to listen for that feedback and listen for those little points. And ask for clarification, ask for help, ask about expectations. Very important. So what are you going to ask about in your first 30 days? Again, those expectations. when does a training need to be completed? What does success look like? So at the end of the first 30 days, what does it look like for me to be successful? And, what should my skill level and proficiency be in? Check in for feedback, have that chat with your boss and say, hey, I went through this first bit of training. Any feedback to share? How is it performance so far? And really about the specifics. Are there policies? Are there location specific rules to be aware of? Sometimes, especially I think with things being virtual, not virtual, COVID rules changing, not changing, there's so many little nuances that may be different time over time again. So just ask, is there an employee handbook? Is there an intranet site? Have a look at that. And then a lot of times there are really great programs that you may not know about that you can join. So ask about that as well, because showing a level of interest and involvement in those first 30 days is really important. It shows the employer as well that you're engaged and that you want to look. A lot of companies now are starting employee resource groups, and these can be really specific to different cultures, to different groups, and they can connect people into a bigger capacity as well. So ask, because sometimes those might not be necessarily available, that you may not be aware of. So you've passed your first month, you're getting in the groove, you've got, your first round of training is done. Now you're going to start to grow and learn and apply your skills. Learn about the flow of the business. When is it busy? When is it not? Is September really busy? Do you start planning for rushes in August? When do you have to get a sense of when it's okay to take vacation and when it isn't? I worked at one company where at the end of a business quarter, and it wasn't like on the calendar year, so it wasn't necessarily easy, you were not allowed to take vacation. And I didn't know that. And it was, vacation denied. Oh boy, why? Because I wasn't aware of the ebb and the flow of how the company worked in that first year. In that 60 days, build your connections, work within the community that's there, find, time to have coffee with somebody, sit down with somebody you don't know if you have a lunchroom or a common gathering room, or find a way to connect with people, because we're all looking for connection and meaning in our work. And these are the people who you're going to be spending a lot of time with. And it's been really hard virtually. I think so many of us are, those chance meetings, I got to solve a problem with somebody in person yesterday and I was very excited. That was great. And I met somebody new, and, if you see them in the elevator or around, that feels good. And have those progress checks. We're going to just keep saying it over and over and over again. Really connect and check in. Is everything on track? Because in asking that feedback, again, and you're listening for it, then you can make the tweaks and the changes. And it's really important to understand how that's going. And hopefully you have a really fantastic rockstar manager who's going to give you some really good feedback. Usually it's like something positive, something to work on, and with something positive, and go forward from there. And in your first 90 days, so 90 to 100, this is where you're going to start to look to add that value. So you're bringing in your outside perspective. Think about, again, why were you hired? Look for those opportunities to maybe solve some pain points, and then make note of your contribution and your wins, because they're small and they add up. And that probationary period is usually about that point. So if you do have a check-in with your boss, you can say, wow, you know what? I kicked it in training. I did so well. I've made these new connections. Hey, I helped figure something out, or I contributed to something that has proven to be a really big win. Yes, I see here in the chat, partner up. Absolutely, partner up as well. And then look at those expectations and leverage those check-in meetings. Give yourself a report card and say, hey, you know what? I have done that, because you really do have to advocate for yourself. So it's that fine line of like knowing your worth, getting it done, not being too boasty, but really understanding where you've contributed, where you've had an impact, and bringing that enthusiasm over. And again, be a part of that team, because you know what? You're new, but you're going to have an impact on the culture. And I think that when you look at the great resignation, the great retention, whatever it is that, however it wants to be positioned, culture and team matter tremendously. Now, a moment, work from home. Oh boy. I don't live in a big house. I don't have a big app. I don't have a big space. I got dogs, kids, things running around. It's tough. So understanding your time management in terms of when you can get things done matters. Actually, I love this picture because it feels like me if I'm sitting somewhere, not in an optimal environment, but I'm trying to get this work done. Take some time, practice sharing your screens. I had one employer who was very impatient, and in the drop of a dime, share your screen. And the minute that you fumbled, it was like this erosion of confidence. So just learn the platform that you're using and just get used to it. Rest your eyes. It's really hard when we can be glued to something all day or on the phone or somewhere. Just give yourself those energy breaks. And more than ever, especially with virtual and working from home, check in for that feedback, because we can't necessarily read body language. We can't see what somebody's reaction is, or all of those sidebar conversations. And as women in this business world, we need to make sure that we can have those relationships and that we can have that place. So that visibility matters so much. So virtually, even more so, check in for feedback. So in summary, it is really about communication. Observe, listen, ask questions. Understand the expectations. Incredibly important. Are you on track? Are you fitting in? Connections. Build that team up, find the buddy. Remember, you have an impact on culture. And look for the wins. And they don't have to be like you've solved the company's biggest problem. It can be that you brought some value and you've teamed up. And it's all about the learning. So every company and workplace is unique. It can easily be information overload. Just, you can go back. I'm still learning. I've been here for a year and I'm, doubling back on things and looking back and know that it just takes time. So keep that learning mindset. We're all students of life and bring it forward. And so with that, I think we're ready for some questions and some discussion. Okay. Now I think we got Melissa back. And then I think that are we going to be doing questions through the chat? And thank you, Jenny. I like you too.
Yes, will we have anyone from Dress for Success joining us to do the questions? Or if not, I can start with them.
Oh, I see them here. Okay.
So one of the first ones that I saw was that there can be a lot of information provided on the first day. I think we've definitely all experienced that. How do you best navigate around the information overload and actually retain the information given?
I'll answer that one.
Go for it.
I would say, some fairly unique learning styles. I write notes, but I don't always go back to them. So to know how it is that you retain information. So when I'm onboarding and when I'm just starting, if you have a laptop that you can use, there's a program called Onenote that's really great. And when I'm doing all of these computer-based trainings, I literally grab screenshots of like using the snippet tool, and I just copy my screen and I paste it and I paste it and I paste it, and I have to do quizzes or checks. Oh, I can go back, and instead of maybe looking at my notes that don't really make sense, I can see what was presented in the little training thing. And then I create tabs. So sometimes I create binders if it's like product related reference material. Other times I use different programs and I create digital workbooks that I can also try and like search in. And that's one of the ways that I try and organize it myself.
And I'll add to that. So I'm like Christine, I like to take notes by hand. It's going to sound like a hoarder. I still have my notebooks from when I started in business development manager role with Philips. So I keep them just in case I have to go back to them. And I file everything. So if it's a copy that's being shared PDF or anything, or PowerPoints that are being shared, I file them in my computer, and now I guess online, just to have access in case I need them. Because I may not realize, that I need them during that first week or first month, but I file them away and always go. I know I could go back to them if I need to.
Mm-hmm. How do employers make seamless onboarding process when the role is remote? I really think that the check-ins matter, checklists matter, and then finding out. So I would say my onboarding with Philips was virtual, and we have different systems and different, like, go here to learn this course. No, you have to go over to this one, and I don't know, I have to do something on hand washing, or I have to, and you get these warnings that pop up, and then I'm pretty sure my manager has a dashboard that he can see that I've done some things or not. So figure out the digital tools and then really try and get, like I said, checklists and check in. But also really dig into that culture piece, right? Find out ways that you can, if there's virtual employee groups, if there are little chats, if there are team socials, stuff like that. I would say that. Melissa, you've got a huge team. Your team's all over North America.
Yeah, so I think one thing for me too, and I found it, so I've had a team where I didn't have a lot of change for years, and all of a sudden in January we had some change with the Great Recession that they're calling out there, and people moving with internally to different roles and development opportunities. And one of the biggest things that I have also learned as a leader, but as an employer and an employee, is don't wait for someone to take action. So if you're an employee and aren't getting what you feel you need to be successful, set those check-ins, ask for a buddy, connect with your teammates. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. And actually, for some people, it's just a learning opportunity. And that's where I started today, right? It's a continuous improvement. I don't think there's any perfect onboarding. Personally, I can always learn. I know as an employee, I can always learn better what I need too. But no, what are those expectations of you when you're coming in? Where can you go if you need the support? Does your manager like official calls? Can you just quickly chat with them if you have a need? Or is there someone that can help fill those gaps in between? And that's something I see a couple chats on the buddy system too. For me, as a leader, when I have direct reports, I always assign them a buddy that's a peer, that's volunteering to really help them navigate. Hey, if they even need to know where to sign up for their health insurance, there's someone that they can go to before they have to wait for my time, maybe, as I might not be as accessible to them, and making sure that they're not feeling left behind, but also that they have an open dialogue and can reach me or someone else at any time.
I see.
And I'll just add to that. Sorry, just going back to the buddy system, because I know there was a question on it. On my side, I always make sure the buddy is someone in the exact same role. Because again, as I mentioned, we have different account managers covering different modalities, different products. So I try to make sure that it's someone in the exact same role so that they know exactly what that person will be going through on a daily basis. So they have the same routine, same challenges, same struggles. So again, that person would be able to answer the questions, as Melissa mentioned, in case I'm not accessible at the moment.
I did see a question about if a company doesn't have a structured plan, is it something to be concerned about? So I've worked in a startup, and that was interesting. But I've also worked in a large organization where we had onboarding, but not that mentorship, or not that, like, it would just kind of disorganize. So take the opportunity. Remember, I said bring the value. You know, Samar brought it up as well. Like, what can you put together to either say, hey, this is what I think is kind of looking like. Sit down, use that as a point to check in. And maybe that's one of your first wins, right? Is that you're the one who's kind of trailblazing a bit and putting it together, and bring that forward in that way. So, because without that clarity, it can be really tricky, because they could have an assumption that, well, didn't you figure that out? Or, so that's where that first 3 months can just be awkward. And so be the mentor, be the person to step up and create that. I did that at a very large surgical company where I created a shadowing mentor program for new hires, because the training that we did in the United States was about 50% applicable. And then we came back into Canada, and looking around, it's like, okay, well, we don't have that product, but we have this product, but I think I kind of need this, but I'm not sure how to sell that. And all of that training that had just been so exhausting just felt like a waste. So we as Canadians kind of stepped up and started to create that. So that would be my advice there. It's not a total red flag, but use it as an opportunity.
I totally agree on that one. And it's surprising, but a lot of companies don't have a structured plan in place. So yeah, as Christine mentioned, take this as an opportunity to set that one up.
Because I think it's important for everyone to recognize also from an employer and an employee perspective that most managers, when they become managers, there is no education given, or I've never personally seen
said.
Hey, now all of a sudden you're a manager, this is how you onboard, even if there's a structured program, right? It's something you you really have to figure out as you go. And some employees may not have ever made a change. What do you expect in that new role? And knowing your own personal needs can also help drive that communication with your manager and get used to the difference in even communication, because no two people are the same.
That's a really good point. I saw the question scroll. I know there was one on, how to make a great first impression now that we are remote. I would say be present, right? Have the camera on. Be ready to always turn the camera on and actually interact with the people that you're connecting with, and be ready. Be ready. Have your questions ready for every meeting that you show up for. Make sure that you're fully engaged, you're paying attention, and you're not, doing a million things in the background, sort of, doing emails while you're talking to somebody else. Be present. Active listening, as Christine mentioned, I think that's key. Asking a lot of questions. And I asked this to our team. So for every meeting that I set up and every meeting that they're setting up, I ask them to come up ready with the agenda and the purpose, and making sure that the right people are at the table. I think now that we are all remote, it's easy to just, invite everybody, even if they're not necessarily needed. So everyone that you're pulling into a meeting or you're inviting, think about, are they going to learn from this meeting, or are they going to be able to provide content input to the meeting? If the answer is no to both those questions, then they don't necessarily need to be there. So be present, have an agenda, have a purpose, and keep the camera on.
Yeah.
Christine, anything from your side?
No, I think that's really fantastic. There was a great question about the first lunch. Like, you're walking around, it feels like high school, and you've got your tray and you're trying to figure out, like, where do the cool kids sit, or where the I would say now that we're just coming back to the office, it's kind of awkward. Like, I walked in back as somebody, I had no idea that she was who I thought she was, because she doesn't usually have her camera on. It was and her picture didn't look like her. And then only then that I see her on the side, and I was like, oh, where is she? Right now, I'm an extrovert. I'll just go sit down wherever, and I can make friends with a doorpost. Like, it doesn't matter. But, hopefully people are a little clued in that maybe you're new. If I would say know yourself too. If you're really just not comfortable and you're not the extrovert, have a seat, but be present and be visible, right? And then if you're feeling later like, okay, you're at the coffee machine, or that's where I said about practicing your name, practicing your introductions, right? And getting it down smooth. It's a surprisingly basic but good life skill, so that you can assert yourself and that you're here and that you're present. So that would be my thought on that.
That's a really good point. And I would say take the long way to the washroom. When you get up, don't just sit at the desk. Get up, walk around, get to meet everybody, because they don't know you. You want to be seen. You want to get to know them. You want them to know you're there. So if you're from your desk, I'll go to the washroom. Take the long way, just as Christine. Nothing wrong with walking up to them and just, you mentioned introducing yourself, being ready with that. It is great. Introduce your.
Oh,
I'm just trying to look for the next question.
There was one
Can
that
we
popped
get this
up
presentation for future reference?
I think it's going to be available on YouTube as well, the presentation. So I noticed something there was an interesting one about sales reps being competitors, right? So when I used to work in media, in the magazine industry, they had all the sales reps on this one floor together selling the advertising. And it was like the Shark Tank. You could not leave your computer unlocked. You could not leave anything on the photocopier. It was just like your contacts, your leads, everybody was pitched up and pitted against each other. So be professional, because you may be their boss one day. You may be working alongside them one day. Your industry may be small. So the what and the how of organizing and understanding your way in the workplace, hopefully nobody's sabotaging you on the very basics. If you're both, eating what you kill, and that's a sales expression where it's just like your success, your everything is based on those metrics, and you are competing for the same pie of something, stay professional, keep it high ground, Be courteous, but be smart. Like, don't leave your laptop unlocked. Don't leave your cell phone around. If you leave, don't leave. Like, I had a manager who went and stole downloaded somebody's contact book and then sat there and printed it. Like, just, I've seen all sorts of stuff. And I know that environment can be really not fun, but, take the high road. And the practical side of navigating a workplace is different than the sales performance side. So that will be my answer.
There was one about what questions to ask at the beginning, I believe, to get to know your coworkers. For me, it's what are their challenges, right? So if you're new, if you're just starting, best way to connect with them is to help them or take some of the load away from them. So what are their challenges? What's getting them excited and motivated? What gets them out of bed in the morning? So learning about that really helps you get to know them better. And questions like, what do they enjoy about their job, right? What are some of the aspects that they truly enjoy? What are some of the things that they may want to change? How did they get to the role that they're in? How do they work on their development plan? What did their journey look like? What do they think of the culture of the company? It's more questions like that. So it helps you get to know them better, but at the same time, it helps you figure out how you can be successful in that company and in that role. Melissa, anything you would like to share?
No, I think you covered that one pretty well.
Okay. So 100% remote, feeling connected and onboarded. Look for the connections whenever you can, camera on. It's hard to know how to navigate sort of the humor or the dynamics of a team, or like how to interject, especially if you're perhaps a bit shy. But remember that you're there for a purpose, that there should be opportunities. Try and stay engaged, connect with people. Maybe if there's somebody that you sort of like feel some sort of a bond to, if there's a moment that you just need to ping them on the side or have a quick sidebar conversation, say, oh my God, I'm kind of losing my marbles, or am I reading that right? Or, and just try and create those moments of connection, because it's hard, especially if you're not inclined, like you're contributing to something, but you physically can't see that contribution towards it. Know that you were hired for a reason. It's there. Contribute, connect, and hopefully it comes together.
I think just to piggyback off that, because most of my team is remote across the US. Some people I haven't met and they've worked with me for about 4 years. So really staying connected, the video, but knowing people's personal preference as well. So that takes a lot of listening to your peers, to your manager, to also understand people's dynamics, right? No two people are the same. We all have different cultural backgrounds. So I think that's a really big piece, is getting on those calls, talking to people, making time for small talk too. So if there's a group call, you set that first 5 minutes where it's more of a light mood to set the base and just see how you can connect aside from work. And I know there's been some comments about making friends. To me, it's not about necessarily making that friend, but I'm at work a good portion of my day. Every day, I want to enjoy the environment that I'm in. So how can I drive those connections? Doesn't mean I'm going out necessarily on weekends with them and that, right? But I want to be able to
we were gonna
connect.
Go out.
Well, we can, but but it's about enjoying every day, right? Because it is such an important part of every one of our day that you want to feel in a good place personally, but that you also have an opportunity to connect with others and not feel on your own.
Yeah.
Very well said. I saw a question about navigating the first few days if you're shy, and I would say call it out. And I'll actually share an example. There's someone who joined our team recently, and first day he shared that with me. He said, "Look, I don't have a problem getting out of my comfort zone, but presenting to a big group is not something I'm comfortable with." He said, "It's something I will work on, but I struggle with that. I end up with a dry mouth. I can't speak." So let your manager know. Absolutely. Again, it's all in the delivery and how you go about this. I find if you position it as something that you're struggling with. So it's a challenge, but that you're working on, it's going to be perceived well. So what I shared with the person that joined our team, I said, no problem. If so, how bad is it? Can you present to a small group, 5-6 people? He said, absolutely no problem. If we are talking 20-30 people, that's when I struggle. I said, okay, if ever that happens and you need to be on a stage, I will come up with you. So I could at least open up and then hand it over, and I will stand there with you so that you don't feel that you're by yourself, and you could take some of the pressure off, which is great. He was very happy with that. So if you let them know that it's a challenge, but that you're working on overcoming that challenge, that goes very well. And it lets them know not to sort of throw you out there and expect you to meet everybody. So absolutely call it out.
Yeah. And then that's a good point for check-ins too, just to say like, okay, well, I've been working and, I had a great conversation with so-and-so, or I said hi to somebody, because you're, as the whatever, the extrovert that I am, I don't just like, whatever, I'll talk to whoever. But I can also read somebody. And if they're a little quieter, I'll try and just be like, hey, what's up? But it could be a huge milestone for somebody, the fact that they, and small talk too, weather, how's your weekend? But in terms of that could be a big achievement that you bring forward, right? That you've expanded your network. And I think that just because perhaps you're a bit shy doesn't mean that you don't have observations or important feedback. So the next part that I would bring to that is, outlining to your boss that you communicate best in a certain way, right? So if something's high conflict, I need to step back. I need to sit on it for 24 hours. And so if I don't acknowledge something right away that's very contentious, it might be because I'm pausing to reflect before I just don't type something out and hit send, right? Or you can tell your boss, like, I may not speak up in the meeting, but I'll send an email after, and I need to just outline my thoughts that way. And that's how I feel more comfortable sharing. So set that communication precedent up.
And as a manager, make room for those who are a bit more shy, I would say. So there are a few team members who are shy, who don't like to speak up in the team meetings even. So I try to make space for them. So I share my ideas, my thoughts first. And when I pause, I actually call on them. Letting them know that, you value their input, their feedback, and that's why you're asking for it. But then call them out, ask for their input during the session so that you make room for them.
See, there's a question that was just popped up at the bottom. How to continue small talk after how was the weather or how was your weekend? And I think that's really challenging, especially coming into a new environment. If you're coming into a new environment, some of it may be just connecting, how long have you been at Philips or any company that you're working with? And, you can start to see some of those connections that maybe you can drive conversation on later. Do you have, if there's an idea you have, do you know that connection I could get to that person? Just finding something that maybe you have in common, whether it's workplace or personal life, and each person may be a little bit different. And sometimes it's just as simple as that weather and weekend and how's your day going, just to set the mood.
Yeah.
Or what exciting projects are they working on? I'd like to ask that. So what are they working on immediately, and some of the long-term projects to better understand where the organization is headed?
And those are good networking opportunities. And people generally like to talk, about themselves. So if you're, you can ask them a question again about themselves or about their work or about something, and then they'll kind of take over usually. Social committees. Is it important to do right away? Yeah, join something.
Absolutely.
It's especially virtually, it's tricky. I mean, I've really enjoyed trying to step into some of the different organizations, even though my schedule is not particularly nice and easy. I try to carve out that time and make sure that I protect it. So.
And those are questions as an employee you can ask too. What support groups are there out there? I know at Philips we have a number of, whether you're with the Asian community, Black, identify as different, we have networks that anybody is open to join, and finding where those passion points that you want to be a supporter or want to be an active contributor with. And that's something I know we try to give employees kind of when they're onboarding too, but making sure that you're asking those if there's different networks you can join, even from an observer perspective.
there's a question that popped up here about deliverables for anticipating creating in the first 30, 60, 90 days. So I think that depends on your role. Is your role more task focused? It depends on your role. I would definitely try to keep your own sort of scorecard with different points, again, so that you can advocate for yourself. And there was somebody who I'll sort of segue it to that question. You haven't been working for a while. Like, have some self-compassion, understand that you're getting back in and that everybody is finding things are pretty upside down and not really ideal, but take those 30, those 60, those 90 days, take that point back to reflect what went well this week, what didn't, what went well this month, where can I expand, right? Because soon enough, you'll feel like you're on that treadmill. And, but yeah, self-compassion, pat yourself on the back. You're getting out there, I had a break between coming to Philips and exiting my last role. And that was a really hard one to try and find out a one sentence bleh for. So I took a sabbatical. I didn't, but it was just a nice way to say, yeah, I hit paused and I focused on my family. And now I'm here and I'm excited, right? Like, practice a one little line. And just because maybe you haven't been working doesn't mean you haven't been busy and you haven't been contributing to something, supporting your family, taking care of your children, doing different things. Certainly you've been alive and doing different things. So just because it's not hyper-focused on a checklist doesn't mean that it doesn't matter.
And I'll just add, be curious, because if you're truly curious, that's when you start asking questions, right? You start asking about what you could be doing, what you should be doing, how the organization is functioning. So just ask questions and get to better understand the expectations, the roles, the company. I find that's extremely helpful, because if you approach it from that curious mindset, that's when everyone realizes that you're truly there to learn and to contribute. So that's, for me, that's very helpful.
Yeah.
And you can ask some of these questions during the interview too. I definitely see a lot of the 30, 60, 90-day questions come through. And if that's really important to you going into that role, ask some of those questions, the culture of the company, are there networks, and really find what drives you as an individual to make sure you're making the best fit for yourself.
And one way I like to ask a question if I don't know, and I try to, can I ask a dumb question? Like, the way that I've learned to rephrase that is, can I ask a naive question? Meaning that you're coming from a place of not knowing, right? It's not a dumb question. You have a question. You're not dumb. You got hired, right? And I've had to learn how to drop that in question, or if I'm observing something, I'm like, what does this mean? So that's
a great point, Christine, because I do see that with new hires, and it's something I always sit down with that new hire once I've seen it happen a couple times, and I have a dumb question or a stupid question, and I'm like, absolutely not. Any question is never, even if you're asking it again, it means you don't understand something and somebody has to clarify. So don't demean yourself in that, right? And find a different way, or just simply, I have a question, I don't know. Because
and get rid of the word just a quick question.
Yes.
No,
good point.
Yes. Just is a 4-letter word. Take it out of your vocabulary. Just a minute of your time. I need a minute of your time.
Yep.
Even for emails, that's a really good point. So I just want to reach out. You're reaching out because you have a purpose, because you need something, and your time is as valuable as theirs. So absolutely agree with that.
And as women, we use the word just all the time, because we need to assert ourselves with that space and really get to the point. I have a question. Following up.
Great point.
Not just following up, right? You don't need permission.
Absolutely.
Great point.
Yeah. And especially for people who, again, are returning to the workplace after that sense of, there's, I think, a lot more awareness about the idea of imposter syndrome. Like, I don't deserve to be here. I shouldn't be here. I'm not skilled enough. I'm not as talented. I mean, I work with, like, Philips is an intimidating environment. We have ultrasound specialists selling ultrasound equipment. I'm not a medical person. I TikTok my way into the medical industry. I'm not an engineer. I'm not, so give yourself compassion. You are there for a reason, and recognize your value and your worth, because if that imposter syndrome sinks in, you will undermine yourself in that first 100 days.
Actually brought up a really good point that I want to touch on too. And it goes back to asking questions. So I always try to think about the next role, right? So yes, I'm in this role, but where do I want to go next? And it's never too early to start working on that. So when you ask questions about your future roles, where you want to get into, learning about their challenges, what it takes to get to that point, again, it shows that you're curious, you're already working, you're already a few steps ahead. So yeah, as women, I find we don't necessarily do that. And also, at Philips, things move fast. People change jobs quickly and they move into new roles because, if the role doesn't exist, we even create it. So we always have to be ready for that next move because the opportunity could come tomorrow. So ask questions, get ready, and prepare yourselves for that next level because it may come sooner than you think.
There's a good question. We've it was not complete. What if onboarding wasn't complete? Provide that feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it takes a good year in a job to see the cycles as well.
Yeah, and ask for it. Yeah, so if there's no true onboarding, I have joined companies that there was no true onboarding. I sort of just, went to the company, went on my first day, and it was, here's your laptop, good luck. So just ask the questions, go to the right people, find out who the right people are, ask the questions, and ask for those checklists because maybe the hiring manager or the company hasn't truly realized it, and they don't know that that gap exists today. So help them put that process in place and ask the questions. Ask for what you need.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a question about a bad first day, and I'm going to go back to the pre-onboarding phase. Who you can get a hold of in an emergency. If it's like Murphy's Law, and like I've been in that situation where just coming back from mat leave and like I had to show up at something with like avocado barf on my shoulder and like just like I can't believe I'm kind of like rolling in this way. Know who you can reach out to ahead of time. If you get the sense that like the world is burning down around you or the TTC crashes or something happens, try and figure out who you can communicate with rapidly and understand. So build in the buffer for time, but also understand that things can just sometimes fly off the rails. So know who to talk to just to make sure that you can be proactive so that it's not like 9:45, right?
That's a great point.
Yeah. Well, I had a new hire once who had, and I didn't know because it was a health matter and it didn't necessarily come up, but she had Crohn's, and I think she had Crohn's, and she was so nervous about driving to the site for her first like shadowing, onboarding, and during COVID, and a lot of the washrooms were closed, and the poor woman had to stop like 5 times, and she was 30 minutes late, but she didn't call me, and I couldn't pre-advise the team that was that she was going to meet that, hey, so-and-so's running late. So she probably, she was embarrassed and she didn't know. She kept thinking she could make up the time because she was panicked. And so, I would have been more than happy to have proactively reached out to the team, say, hey, you know what? She's running late. I don't need to disclose why. There's a situation. She'll be there soon.
Communication is key. That's well said. So for me, communication is key because when we don't know what's happening, we assume the worst. Over the years, I've learned not to do that. So if, someone on the team is late or they don't show up or something happens, now that I know them and I trust them, I don't go to that dark place right away thinking, oh, they're slacking off. Obviously, they're, probably outside. But that's because that trust has been built. But if that trust is not there, the relationship is not there yet, I would say communication is key. So let them know what's happening. Let them know why you're going to be late. Just communicate in advance, as much in advance as you can, as Christine mentioned. That would be helpful.
Yeah. There's a question about disclosing mental health challenges. That's a tricky one. So I have an experience where I wish she would have disclosed somehow early in that process. And this is a different individual. She was having panic attacks on the way into work, and she would just stop her car and just freeze but wouldn't connect with me and I said, listen, I don't need to know the specifics, right? But I think I would have, and I was frustrated, and I actually had to do, there was a period of 5 days of no communication because of a very difficult situation. And I had to employ a wellness check. And that was difficult. That was really, really hard. And I certainly had nothing but empathy. I was relieved to know that she was okay. but not showing up for work for 5 days is a challenge. And so I think it's a fine, I don't know sort of I know from the side of it's important to be able to understand something, but at the same time, in that early phase, you're trying to make those good first impressions. So delicately, carefully, I'm not sure what the legally, I don't think you have a requirement to. So it's just, I think about the compassion and understanding.
I think if there's accommodations that are needed, depending on, maybe calling somebody out might cause those panic attacks. You don't necessarily have to disclose, your health condition, whether it's mental or physical, but saying like, this is what works best for me. Situations like this cause me unnecessary stress. And you can, if you don't feel comfortable or don't want to, because I think there's some laws sometimes. I work a lot in the US, so you can't disclose much or can't ask about that, and really just knowing what do you need from your employer to also navigate that, or what you feel comfortable to share so that they don't think that negativity of you. I had a brain injury for the last 2 years. I've only just recovered, and being very clear with my manager, at times I'm going to have to disconnect from work, because as I was starting to get back into the workplace, I transitioned to part-time, then back to full-time. But there were days that the symptoms would just be too much. I had to step away, and we found a path, like I could make up the time. Or, she wasn't there. Just let me know when you're stepping away, if it's going to be, I'm gone for the rest of the day. And just quick, she understood my situation. I've always done my hours, but I was clear on that. She knew the situation, but that way I was able to have the accommodations when needed. Some days the request was to be on video. I wasn't feeling well enough to be on video. So it wasn't that I wasn't there or participating. I just physically knew my limits, and I needed to stay for my own health and well-being. And it was really well received. But I think if I hid it, maybe it would have been perceived more in a negative way.
I agree. There's a great question about new role, first 90 days, new environment, new culture. I think the being curious and the observing and the checking in on expectations is really important. I took a global business course and I loved it. And it talked about how in different cultures, there's an expectation that the manager be the expert and the person you defer everything to, versus in other cultures where it's much more flat and autonomy. Some cultures are more oriented towards risk taking. Like in the United States, I find my American counterparts can be quite aggressive. They'll take risks, they'll push. It's a lot of chest thumping. And then in other contexts, and working on a project with some helping some colleagues with some work in Japan, it was like, okay, so let's do a flow chart. Let's lay this out visually, So I would say recognize, of course, there are going to be differences. Observe, learn, take things in, and sort of look for the cues in the early stages. But be confident, and congratulations, because it's super exciting on your new role. So we're really hoping the best for you.
And I'll just add to that. I would say be mindful of different personalities, right? So just recently we did insights training to get to learn about each other and figure out how to interact with each other and how to work with each other. And it was a great experience, because some of us are more direct. I myself, I'm very direct to the point when I am interacting with someone, sort of, get to the data, get to the point, let's make a call and move on. But it's not the case with everyone. Obviously, early on in my career, I hadn't realized that, but now I'm more mindful of that. So when I'm interacting with someone who is, more passionate about sharing the backstory first, and then, taking in everyone's feedback into account. Absolutely. So wanting to interact and gather everyone's input and make sure that everyone is heard, I'm more mindful of that, and I make sure to, leave space for that. So be mindful of different personalities and ways of working.
Well, thank you so much. We're happy to wrap here. Iona and I were kind of texting back and forth during this session, because there's so many great topics that you guys have covered and so many great questions that have come through. And this is a really great topic that we really haven't touched on as an organization yet for a lot of our clients. And so I'm seeing all these claps come through. I think everybody is agreeing with me that it was such a great topic, and thinking about, okay, you got the job, what's next? How do you ace, those first 30, 60, or 90 days? And I think even just addressing like the lunchtime conversation, like I think those are all things that people think about and want to try to navigate. So truly, what a wonderful session. I have to say a huge thank you to all of you for joining. It was such a great way to finish off this week. Iona has sent me her notes because we were worried she wasn't going to be able to have her sound again today. So she's here in spirit. You can see her. So I just wanted to mention a couple of things before we wrap today. As we mentioned a couple of times during this conference, Mars Canada has been offered generous one-on-one mock interviews following this session, and there's still a couple of spaces left. So Kim is going to pop into the chat an email that you can directly reach out to say that that's something that you might be interested in, and you can be contacted to confirm your appointment. And then also Thursday, June 9th, join us at noon for an Empowerment Through Skincare virtual workshop presented by Isomer Skincare. And all registrants who have attended the session will receive a complimentary 5-piece skincare kit, and spots are going quickly. Yes, I see everybody's reactions. This is a similar session we hosted earlier this year, and it was so well received. It was such a great session. So if you haven't joined, please sign up to do so. Don't forget to fill out the quiz. Kim, I think, is going to repop that link into the chat as well. And there she goes. Perfect. Look at this. Tech is amazing. And don't forget, we're going to do the draw for the $100 gift card for the attendees today who have participated in this session and completed your poll. And then we also have the draw for the 5 Acer Chromebook laptops, and that we'll do the draw next week. So keep your eyes peeled on your email, because that's how we'll be reaching out to all of you. Kim, if you want to launch the poll here, we'll wrap up today and just get everybody's feedback before you sign off. But once again, thank you so much to all of you ladies joining us on the call, and thank you to all of the women who participated in our sessions this week. We are so grateful to have over 100 participants all week, every day, and it was so nice to see so many familiar faces popping into the chat. Oh, look at that. What a great way to finish off the day. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. Sign up for those sessions, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone. Bye.